What NFC North receiver has turned from a potential breakout into a sleeper? Is one elite quarterback easy to knock down your drafting board right now? And what NFC West player is being severely undervalued in FantasyPros Championship drafts at the moment? Plus, six-time FFPC league winner Steff Anderson is going to join us to discuss Seahawks receivers, Bengals running backs, and more. We've got a great show. Ferrell Elliott is here. I'm Eric Balkman. Stick around. Your high-stakes fantasy football hour starts now.
Can't stand the pressure. I've seen greater men that need a lesson.
Broadcast live and heard around the world, you are now watching the most entertaining hour of radio on the planet. Welcome to the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour presented by myffpc.com with your hosts Eric Balkman and Ferrell Elliott. The High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour is your home for analysis from the best players in the world. And now, because no one else was available, here are Eric Balkman and Ferrell Elliott.
Solace in the scripture. Are we not all our father's sons? I became a man. Nobody ever told me what a man was.
Thank you, Rob. Greetings and salutations to all of you Balkaholics and Ferrelliacs. Welcome to the latest episode of the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour presented by the Fantasy Football Players Championship at myffpc.com. That's myffpc.com. I'm your slightly above average host, Eric Balkman. You know me from the Road of His High Stakes Lowdown, the Better Sports Network's High Stakes Fantasy Football Show, and the FFPC. My co-host is the definitive commissioner of fantasy football, Ferrell Elliott. Coming up on tonight's show, Ferrell and I will hash out our thoughts on Javonte Williams, Deneric Prince, and much more before the six-time FFPC league winner Steff Anderson drops by the dish on Tua Tagovailoa, Luke Musgrave, and much more. If you want to connect with us on the X, do so at hsffhour, at Eric Balkman, and always check out the Kentucky Fantasy Football State Championship at KFFSC.com. Register for some main events like I did today, down live in Louisville or online or live in Cincinnati, which is coming up in just a matter of a few weeks. You can post on our Facebook page, facebook.com/hsffhour. Email the show at highstakesfantasyfootball@gmail.com. If you have any questions for us, send them in now. It is we're going to do our best to try to get to all the chat room questions, X posts, and emails and fantasy feedback coming up later on in the show. Thanks to our audio engineer and my best friend, Bryce, and of course, our producer and mutual friend, Rob. The 2024 Fantasy Pros Championship is filling up. I just commissioned a couple of drafts tonight. I'll be commissioning another one tonight at midnight. Hop in. Let's have some fun. You can always take advantage of the weekday giveaway that's going on this week as well. If you draft a team in the Fantasy Pros Championship that you register for today or tomorrow, you'll be eligible for that drawing. We're going to have early Friday morning where we're giving away 3 Fantasy Pros Championship teams so you can actually play in the Fantasy Pros Championship for $1 million for free. That's right. All you have to do is sign up and draft a team today or tomorrow. Every single team that signed up and drafted this week starting Monday is eligible. A $1 million grand prize and a $6 million prize pool. Speaking of which, a near $6 million prize pool and a $1 million grand prize is also featured in the FFPC main event. Register for that at myffpc.com. We got best ball drafts popping off with slow and live formats each and every day. The Superflex Best Ball Tournament, the FFPC Best Ball Tournament. You'll win $300,000 or $100,000 in each of those, just $125 and $35 to enter. If you want to play fantasy football every single day of the year, Empire Dynasty Startups and Dynasty Startups are available at myffpc.com. Those are filling up pretty much every day as well. A lot of fun to get into the Empire Leagues. A lot of fun being in the Empire business. Just ask Walter White. Hopefully it ends up a little bit better for you than it did for him, and that is a spoiler alert. myffpc.com to play in all those formats I just mentioned. Remember to like this video, subscribe to the channel, comment on the video, share it with your friends, share it with your enemies, and get notified each and every time we go live. Like tonight, we've been doing, he's the hardest working man in the business. He's back again tonight for more. We got a great guest coming up, but before we can get to the guest, let's get to Ferrell Elliott, the definitive commissioner of fantasy football. Hey, welcome in. Happy Wednesday, man.
Thank you. And yeah, we are beginning. We'd have a little hard work, but it's when it's work you love, it doesn't seem to bother you, Balky. Hearing from a lot of good guys here. Some great reports of pros versus Joes coverage coming in from around the fantasy world. We're gonna miss our old running buddy Terp tonight. Who's our guest?
We have Steff Anderson coming on, who has been drafting a lot of FantasyPros Championship teams, and is a 6-time FFPC league winner. So we'll get the skinny on how his drafts have been going so far this summer as he plots his way to $1 million grand prize. By the way, I should mention this too. Pros versus Joes will resume. We've done the first 3 over the course of this week. We've done the first 3, and then number 4 comes back Sunday. We have a special guest co-host that will be joining Ferrell and I for that program on Sunday. In place of Terp, and we also have a special cameo appearance by somebody everybody will want to hear from as well. So that's coming up on Sunday. It's going to be a lot of fun. Let's get into tonight's topics, Ferrell. You and I have talked about a lot of players over the last 72 hours, so I do apologize if we are rehashing any of these conversations, which we might be tonight.
We know how to make it fresh, Balky.
It's all about, we're just making everything fresh.
Freshen it up.
We're freshening it up. Where you unscrew the cap of that soda bottle and you take one tiny sip and then you screw it back on super tight. So it's like you never opened it, and maybe you get recarbonation to it. That's what we're doing tonight. We're recarbonating fantasy football conversations, and we'll kick things off in the Motor City with Jameson Williams. Nick Baumgartner, who covers the Lions for The Athletic, said that he thinks Jameson Williams looks like a different player in this year's training camp. He says he expects Williams to be a to finally function as a starter in Detroit's lineup.
Easy for you to say, Bob.
Easy for me to say. English is my second language. He looks stronger through the middle, more explosive with better body control in the air and near the sideline. If he had one hit the dirt today, I didn't see it, end quote. This is kind of backing up with the Detroit coaches, including Dan Campbell, what they have said about Jameson Williams coming into now his junior season in the NFL. He's going to be the lid lifter, the field stretcher on this offense. Obviously, Sam Laporta, Amon-Ra St. Brown, and Jahmyr Gibbs to a certain extent will be the target monsters on this team. If we look at the mojo on Jameson Williams, shout out to Fantasy Mojo, Darren Armani at Fantasy Mojo on the X, fantasymojo.com. The service you need to subscribe to if you're playing in the FFPC. Anytime we cite ADP data, it is due to Darren Armani's website, fantasymojo.com. Jameson Williams, wide receiver 49 at the 10.07. Ferrell, that's Cortland Sutton, Curtis Samuel, Joshua Palmer territory. And while I do like Samuel, and we know that Cortland Sutton is not happy with his contract, I don't know if he's officially holding out. I don't think he is, but I'd have to look that up. Jameson Williams does stick out there in that little pod of receivers in the mid-10th round. I'd be interested in a player like him because I feel like that is not a league-winning player, but definitely a player that can smash his ADP there.
Mm-hmm. I like Samuel and Palmer very well. Okay, let's take a look at this player. It'd be interesting, when he came into the league, he's 6'1", 180. I'd like to see his physicality and just how much muscle and weight that he's put on that body. Everything about him screamed first-round draft pick and big difference maker when he came out. What those old boys from New York used to call him? Whiskey Bill.
Yeah.
And they were trying to speak in code where no one else would learn. They were drafting him. I'm a little surprised at 10 that it's that high based on his resume. But if you can think back to when he came into the league, there's elite movement skills and excellent speed, huge wingspan. The guy's got the longest arms. The Michael Jordan poster? That's kind of who he is. So I'll finish up by saying that corners in the NFL had a real easy time when he did play. Those defenders are pushing him off his routes. And the type quarterback he has to have a player that's running the right route and is where he is supposed to be in the route. But there should be some glorious deep passing game with this player as long as he's improved his ball catching skills. He was a bit of a body catcher at Alabama, but he's young, he's fast, and now based on what they're saying about him, he's getting it. And, you say this is his third year in the league. I think we're short of 30 catches for his career. So, and he's had some health issues. So all in all, it's going to come together for this player this year. If you draft him over Palmer and Samuel, you might get tired of watching Palmer and Samuel churn up yardage as they move while you're waiting for that big Williams play.
Yeah, I think Palmer and Samuel, to me, didn't you say, was that last night or Monday that you said you thought Curtis Samuel has an 80 catch season in him this year?
It could easily happen.
Yeah, and I think that we always crave the PPR targets, and we crave the receptions. Obviously, both those guys, no question, in my opinion, they're going to have more catches than Jameson Williams this year. But fantasy points, when you consider the field flipping ability that Jameson Williams has, that maybe Palmer and definitely Samuel do not have, then it gets a little bit closer. Let's move on to Baltimore, Ferrell.
Okay.
Dan Graziano for ESPN said today that no one in the Ravens organization knows when Lamar Jackson is going to start practicing again. Now, this isn't a soft tissue injury. This isn't like a broken bone or a strained ligament. He's simply ill. He is sick right now. Graziano said that since the COVID pandemic, Jackson has been getting sick more and more frequently, which I think is kind of a weird thing to say, but I guess if it's true, then it's true. Apparently, he might return on Friday after the off day tomorrow for the Ravens. The team sent Lamar Jackson home this past Sunday when he was showing symptoms of an illness. And you'd like to think that, okay, this isn't a big deal. He'll be at full strength at training camp shortly. However, Ferrell, when you consider all the elite quarterbacks that are going early in drafts right now, including Lamar Jackson, you have Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes, Jalen Hurts going before him, and then Anthony Richardson, CJ Stroud after him. I almost wonder if Lamar Jackson is a fade here with these elite quarterbacks. I know that this is just an illness right now, but the fact that this has been happening now for 4 years where he's getting sick more frequently, I want Lamar Jackson at full strength, full power every single Sunday, and I don't want to risk, him, trying to run and throw under the weather. To me, I think that there's a non-zero chance that this could be happening and bleeding into the season, and maybe it already has. And if it has, I haven't noticed it, but I guess this is the first time I'm hearing it. Your thoughts on Lamar Jackson?
We have nothing but respect for Lamar, and it is unsettling to see what's going on with him. There's been noticeable weight loss. I thought that weight loss was replaced with muscle. But yeah, I'm concerned about it from a personal standpoint and a fantasy standpoint. So from a fantasy standpoint alone, we will know when our drafters have truly bought into it and truly faded him when they replace him with Richardson at the draft position, when Richardson moves in front of him. I hope this doesn't have a lasting effect on this player's career in this 2024 season, because I'm expecting such big things from the Baltimore team.
Lamar Jackson right now, 6'02". Anthony Richardson is the next quarterback up at 6'11". And maybe I'm just making too much of this, but it's weird for, and I'm always looking for angles. I'm always looking for, stuff that might give me tiebreakers, the wrong phrase, but the stuff that's going to give me a little bit more insight into these guys. And when you tell me, Graziano tells me that this has been happening for 4 years now, that is a little concerning. Now, he did win the MVP in one of those years, so maybe it's not as bad, but it's still, I think, to borrow your phrase, it is a little unsettling. And we'll be following this Lamar Jackson thing throughout training camp. We got Steff Anderson coming up here in just a couple of minutes. Before we get to him, the 6-time FFPC league champ, let's talk about the Los Angeles Rams. Sean McVay said, according to Eric Williams today, who covers the team, so that the Rams and Matthew Stafford now have a new deal. This happened yesterday, Ferrell. It was revealed because McVay was late to his presser, and the reason he was late was because he was part of this meeting that, between the Rams and Stafford to get this deal done. 3 years left on Matthew Stafford's deal. No guaranteed money, however, past this season. And it sounded like Matthew Stafford wanted to fix that. He did. I don't know the figures on this, but I do know that the Rams clearly believe in him because they've re-upped with him. And when you look at where Stafford is going in drafts, Ferrell, quarterback 19 at the 1504. Now, he does not have the rushing upside that some of these other quarterbacks do, which is fine because you have to invest in higher draft capital to get those quarterbacks. But Matthew Stafford has a first-round receiver in Puka Nacua. He's got a third-round receiver in Cooper Kupp, as far as fantasy goes this year. He's got a third receiver in Demarcus Robinson that, yes, he's going late, but find me a high-stakes player that isn't at least a little titillated about drafting him late, because it seems like everybody's titillated by Demarcus Robinson at this point. And Stafford's going too late for me. Am I wrong in here? Should Stafford be going higher than quarterback 19 in the 15th round?
You're letting that secret out of the bag, Balky. You roll the film back 2 years and you have Stafford throwing over 40 touchdowns. He's got more of a rushing game. They've become a much more balanced team. I got him after the 15th round recently. He was not who I targeted as a second quarterback. I was shocked to see he was there. And he paired marvelously with Josh Allen. Week 12 bye week, the Rams are at home entertaining the Eagles. And I think that's a mighty fine matchup. A quarterback like this with 3 prolific fantasy football players that you mentioned, this is quite a bargain. If he is your second quarterback, how often are you going to start him? But if you lose your starting quarterback to injury, you have to be very pleased to have limited draft capital in a player with this kind of potential. And I don't expect him to return to 40 touchdowns, but 30 to 35. Hey, he's 36 years old, maybe 1 touchdown for each year. I'll take that.
I would too. I'd be thrilled with that. Drafting Stafford in the 15th round, Ferrell, is something that I'm going to do this year, in part because of Matthew Stafford getting hurt a couple of years ago when I was all in on the Rams offense, and I drafted Stafford as my first or second quarterback everywhere, and then he gets hurt right away. And I said, well, to hell with this. I'm drafting backup quarterbacks going forward. I'm not going to mess around with this anymore. So Stafford is definitely a guy I don't like him as a starter, but I do like him for sure as a backup. And if you really wait on quarterbacks, I think I brought this up before too. If you really like to wait on quarterbacks, Herbert and Stafford is easily attainable. Cousins and Stafford, easily attainable. Tagovailoa, Caleb Williams, maybe you want to go the opposite ends, like the old quarterback, the veteran, you know what he's capable of, and then the unopened gift box, with Caleb Williams. So I think there's something to be said for that pairing as well. I'll definitely be doing that in Kentucky in more than a couple of leagues where I'm waiting on quarterback, letting the cat out of the bag on that as well for anybody who's watching who will be drafting in front of me, or next to me, I should say. Let's bring in tonight's guest, ladies and gentlemen. He has won a half dozen leagues in the FFPC already. He's on a mission this year to win the $1 million grand prize in the FantasyPros Championship. We'll talk strategy with him. We'll talk about how his drafts have turned out so far this year and much more. Please welcome onto the program, Steff Anderson. Steff, so good to have you aboard tonight. Thanks so much for spending your Wednesday evening with us, dude.
Yeah, thank you. Can you guys hear me okay?
You're coming through A-okay.
Awesome. Loud and clear, Mr. Anderson.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Well, nice to meet you guys. Thanks for having me on.
It's absolutely great meeting you. It's wonderful to have you on. Hopefully you feel that way after the interview tonight. But we will kick things off with a non-fantasy football question. Can you tell us what you're doing for a living when you're not winning all these FFPC leagues?
Very busy father. Very busy working in the IT security industry. So a lot of noise around that industry right now. So yeah.
No kidding.
What's going on, Steff? Like what is going on with this? Do we have to go back to pencil and paper, or is this
file cabinets
and file cabinets?
Multiple individuals rummaging through file cabinets. No, it's we get some Watergate. Maybe Watergate will come out of it. Who knows? But no, it's it's. I think that there's just a lot of noise right now in the security space. There's a lot of companies, positioning themselves around cloud initiatives, and they're moving at lightning speed, right? So there tends to be a lot of mistakes. There's a lot of competition. So I think that this is a good example, right? Because the company that went through this was a company that was very well known in the space. So growing too fast.
Yeah, I guess that's what it is.
Let's get you very well known in the fantasy football space. You've never been on the show before?
No, I haven't. I lead a pretty low profile. I play a lot of leagues, but I'm not out there addressing content. I basically consume you guys. I watch, people like yourselves and listen to a lot of other pundits, and I kind of gauge my drafts by what I'm hearing and where, I know players align. within the draft. And so you guys help me out, because I know where sometimes I figure out where you guys are wrong, and sometimes I figure out where you're right. So
you'll be more correct on the latter than the former. Well, okay, listen. Figure out this for me. You can distinguish yourself and help me out. If you can tell me what to expect from Kyren Williams. Last year I had a team, playing partner selected Kyren Williams very late in the double-digit rounds, and it was part of that the reason we were so successful. Now he is significant draft capital to get him on your team, but he's moving around a little bit. Your thoughts on Kyren Williams?
So Kyren, I had Kyren in a couple of leagues last year. He kind of came on late. There was some news that came out of him. A couple of beat writers wrote him up, and there were the smart people that took him benefited greatly, right? I think that he was injured last year for at least 4 or 5 games. Otherwise, I think he probably would have had a monster year. He's still had a monster year. I still think he's worth, where he's at right now. I know that in Underdog, he kind of started in that turn at first. He was around that 1-2 turn, and now you can grab him middle of 3rd round. I think that has to do with Corum, for one. A little uncertainty there. I still think McVay believes in him heavily. In the McVay concept, they run a lot of stack formations. They need backs that can block. So he's getting the ball out quickly, and I think Kyren fits that scheme, and I think he trusts Kyren. So, I like Kyren. I have him in several leagues. So
very good.
There was an interview that I think on Roto World 3 weeks ago, probably now, and Adam Grossbard, who obviously covers the Rams for the OC Register, kind of alleviated a lot of the concern I had with Kyren Williams. The fact that Sean McVay loves him, the fact that Blake Corum was not drafted to take his place, at least not right now, but to give him a breather. They wanted somebody that could come in and not miss a beat if Williams were to go down. He also kind of downplayed the foot injury as well. So I did start thinking this year, early, January, February, March, that Kyren Williams was, 1st round, 2nd round was too high. And now I'm starting to think like maybe he's actually a buy at the late 2nd round. Maybe he's a buy in the early 3rd round when he slips. That we just got done talking about the Matthew Stafford-led Rams offense, and Kyren Williams is going to be a big part of that this year as well. So I'm starting to like him. I'm starting to come over to your side, Steff, on Kyren Williams. Go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, you look at the division he plays into, there's still a lot of teams that defensively are still rebuilding. You got defenses, you got Arizona's defense, you got, Seattle's defense will be hopefully improved a little bit, but I think there's a lot of good opportunity there just overall for Los Angeles.
It's significant game logs. When he gets going, he really keeps it up. That motor's still running. If you look at his individual games in production, 4th quarter, he's running just as hard as 1st.
Oh, yeah.
You mentioned the division. Let's stick in that same division here, Steff, and talk about the Seahawks pass catchers for a second. I think this is kind of a compelling argument. We brought this up several times over the last few months. DK Metcalf, whose efficiency has gone down again for like the 2nd or 3rd straight year. He's going at the 402 in drafts. You got Jackson Smith and Jigba, who a lot of people were let down with last year, both in Dynasty and redraft. But he's still going strong, 804 at the wide receiver 42. And then Tyler Lockett, he's just going to be a thing until the end of time in Seattle. They just extended him again, wide receiver 52, 1103. I don't know if you have strong feelings on any of these receivers, but given their ADP, Metcalf in the 4th, Smith and Jigba in the 8th, Tyler Lockett in the 11th, do you have a favorite pick at cost between those 3 Seahawks wideouts?
So I like the system. It's a new system for them. It's going to be more pass dominant or pass prevalent, right? I would say that it's interesting because Lockett's kind of, they run a three receivers, system like several other teams do, right? Lockett is the key differentiator. If you look at when he was out last year, look at what JSN did. I mean, he had several really good games. And I think that DK is going to be much better this year. I'm drafting a lot of DK in that 3rd round. I've even gone as high because there's some uncertainty in that kind of 2nd round, the middle 2nd round. And I actually taken DK at the end of that 2nd round a couple times. So I would say that it really is injury dependent. If Lockett goes down or one of those two one of them go down, I think whoever benefits will do so greatly there. I know that's kind of a weak answer, but if I'm drafting, I like DK still. I like him in that third round. I'm taking him all day. And I think that JSN's going to be injury dependent still, because I think they still love Lockett. Like I said, they're not going to have to bronze a statue of him. He's just going to play for the end of time. So he's going to be there just to disrupt. As long as he's there, as long as he's playing, I think that JSN still could have a great season if Lockett doesn't play.
No, I like your answer, and it's not simplistic. It's not overthinking. And we let me tell you, we've been doing how many nights of pros versus Joe's, Balky? Like 40.
Yeah, I'd say 40, 41.
Yeah, we've done something like that. It's and you talk about the end of time. I'm praying for it, but the
Hold on. I want to reset here a little bit, and before you ask the next question, Ferrell, about Ayuk, let's go to Trevor Holt's question. For Steff first.
Oh, that's a good question too.
Do you have a favorite late round tight end in the Fantasy Pros drafts that you've been building?
I do want to see what Woods does, what Jelani does late with Indy. He looks so good when he was a rookie. The problem is he's literally a walking mash unit.
He models a uniform better than any player in the league. Gosh, he just really.
So I do like Woods. I do like him a lot. What else? Who else? Everyone's on Fant. I do like Fant too as another pass catcher because of the offense. Because I want to see what Fant can do. He looks great at times. You look at tape of him. He looks similar to Laporta how he moves. He's fast. He's one of those atypical Iowa tight ends, right? So I do. Fant's fine. What do you consider later on? Are you talking like in a 20-team league, 17 through?
Yeah, I would say just like the kind of like if you're going with a third tight end, I think Woods is interesting, and I do like he would probably be a guy that I do like taking late. Johnson's interesting now just because I think Juwan Johnson, I think he's been discounted heavily, and depending on his health. He's going at the very end of drafts now too, and he's definitely worth a flyer. I mean, likely he's going with the 17th pick. I mean, he's a nice little play too still. Yeah.
Or 17th round, sorry.
We're going late there. You talked about everyone but Irv Smith, thankfully.
Yeah. Hold on. You fry me for this Irv Smith thing.
We just hadn't brought it up this year.
Not at all. I don't even.
We haven't brought it up this year.
August of 23 is the last time his name was uttered on this podcast by yours truly, and I'm pretty proud of that. Ferrell was what do you call it? Ferrell was my sponsor
throughout the year.
Ferrell was my sponsor to kick my Irv Smith addiction, and I'm proud to be Irv Smith free. And this podcast was Irv Smith free until tonight. So we'll move past that demon and move on to San Francisco.
A wonderful football player that can't help you in fantasy football, but we did give updates when he caught a pass. It was a game he caught 2 passes in last year.
Yeah,
a guy that's going to catch much more than that in San Francisco. Disgruntled or happy is Brandon Ayuk. And I'm curious, I never really thought that there had been a drop in his draft status. Maybe I'm wrong. You're a much more volume drafter, so you would know. Has there been a drop as we've gone through some of this off-season and preseason drama, or people largely expected that what he's done now would happen, that he reports and goes on about business? And how high do you think he will return to?
So I have not in Underdog when kind of the news came out on him. He was going kind of that middle, maybe at the highest, like 14th pick in that area. And he went down to the end of the second, kind of that turn area. Maybe he got into the third a little bit. But he really didn't move that much. I mean, he moved past, Waddle kind of took over. Olave kind of took his spot. Now it's kind of a horse apiece, right? You're seeing those guys kind of go in unison. I really haven't seen a ton of movement on Ayuk, and I don't expect to. I think I like Ayuk. I think he's in a great system. He's going to play. I think he's not going to give up, like $14 million to sit. It's different than, the running backs that are going to sit for $3 or $4 million. It's a substantial chunk of change. So I expect Ayuk to play, and I expect him to be good.
That's exactly. And John Terry, can you both Balky post that?
Yep.
That's amazing to me. I did not see that. What does Darren say about Ayuk over the last 5 days, Balky?
Yeah, I can tell you over the last 3 days, even fresher than that, Ferrell, 312 on average is where he's going. As high as the 212, as low as the 408, or if you were drafting in the FFPC main event tonight, like John Terry was, you got him at the 411. So he's been slipping a little bit too. And he's not practicing. I think that's the other thing that we should keep in mind. He reported to camp, he's there, but he's not practicing. So I don't know.
Having no fun.
I got him in a couple
FFPC drafts at, I think around that. You're right. Like that was in that 4 area, like beginning of 4th, late 3rd. So and I think that I've talked about this to death. For whatever reason, just he has not moved a whole lot. When there was rumors that he was going to be traded, when he was holding out, or he wanted to trade, he didn't slip a whole lot. And now that he's in camp, he hasn't gone up a whole lot. So I think fantasy drafters are just smarter at this point. They understand how the CBA works. They understand what Ayuk has to do to get paid, and sitting out and not, practicing, all preseason and not playing in games. That's not going to help you get paid. Let's talk about the Bengals running back, Bengals backfield stuff here, because I think there's been a little bit of a push lately for Chase Brown in drafts, and he's still going well behind Zach Moss, but the gap is narrowing here. You're looking at Chase Brown as running back 37 at the 910. Zach Moss is running back 28 at the 802. So this is about a round and a half, a little bit more than a round and a half of difference between where these guys are going in the Fantasy Pros Championship right now. In general, how do you handle Brown and Moss in that Bengals backfield? So I'm still bigger on Moss just because I think they like him from a pass blocking perspective. And I think that it's such a dynamic offense, right? I still prefer Moss. I'm drafting a lot of Moss. Whenever I can get him, I'm pretty much hitting the trigger at the right spot. Like you said, around that 8-round spot on FFPC makes a lot of sense. I like Brown though, too. I saw him play a lot of college ball. It's just that I'm taking Moss a little bit higher than him still. I think there's a lot of similar backfields, whether it's Cincinnati, Tennessee, Pittsburgh's got a different one where they're more run heavy, as opposed to, I think you're going to see a lot of these traditionally smaller receiving backs that you have at Tennessee and at Cincinnati. They're different than those Pittsburgh backs, but I think they're going to be all used, kind of in unison, right? So I think there's good opportunity for both, but I prefer Moss.
Makes sense to me. What doesn't make sense to me is that Balky was bringing up the fact that Stafford has so many early weapons in fantasy football. You say the same thing for Tua down at Miami. And Tua, last year, completing his first 17-game season, it was a marvelous thing to watch. 4,600 yards passing, close to 30 touchdowns. The team
doesn't like the cold, does he?
The team has largely stayed intact, and he's got a great running back room and a wonderful home field advantage to play with. Put all that together, fantasy players just don't particularly seem interested. Are the ones that are drafting, are they wise, or are they just taking advantage of a double-digit top quarterback?
So I understand why they're reluctant. I think it has to do with the fact that he does play predominantly cold weather teams late, right? And there's some of that this year. If you just count the tight ends, right, or the touchdowns, just estimate. Let's say Waddle gets 8 to 10 touchdowns. Let's say Tyreek gets 11 to 12 touchdowns, and these are maybe even conservative numbers. Let's say Jonnu Smith grabs 4 or 5 touchdowns. Let's say Achane, the backs run, or they score eight touchdowns between the 3 of them, right? I mean, you're talking that's well over 30 touchdowns, right? Mm-hmm. So it doesn't add up, and it's meaning Tua's going to perform if he stays healthy, and if provided that I think that if the Dolphins stay healthy, there's no reason why he shouldn't have a really good year.
Michael Quinzel was in the YouTube chat. He addressed this question to me, but I think we should all attack this. Favorite best late round bounce back running back, which I know that's kind of loaded, right? Like there's a lot to unpack there. He's got to be a bounce back guy. He's got to be a late round guy. There's two guys that come to mind. We're going to talk about one of them in a second, in Khalil Herbert. But I think that as far as the 16th round or later, Steff, I think Herbert and Deontay Foreman are my favorites. The rest are either rookies or just guys I have no interest in. But if I'm looking for a bounce back running back in the late rounds, those are my two favorites. Do you have any favorites down in that area?
Would you throw Miller in there, Keandre?
From New Orleans?
Is he a little too early?
I think he's going to go earlier than Herbert and.
Yeah, I think so too. He does go earlier.
Yeah,
I did an FFPC the other night, and I got him. I think I pulled it a little bit earlier. I think it was 14th or 15th.
But I still think that's great value stuff. Like I think I'm a big fan of Kendra Miller this season for sure.
Yeah. So Hubbard. So everyone's on. Everyone's jumping on the rookie, right? Brooks, and he's got an ACL, and I don't know where. I can't remember where he's going on FFPC. I would think that he's going in that 17 round, maybe 17th round somewhere, and that's about where Hubbard's going, right?
I'm looking it up right now. I'm going to find out. Chuba Hubbard, running back 54. Actually, in the 13th. He's at the 12, 13th.
Oh, is he that? Right, is he that early?
Yeah.
Okay.
And I don't know what that is. If that's just people, people were so on Jonathan Brooks after he got drafted. And now I think there's a lot of drafters realizing, oh, hey, this guy tore his ACL in November. Maybe I should bump Hubbard up a little bit because I might have some early season value with them. I don't know what it is, but yeah, Hubbard's moved up.
Yeah. If you're looking at, someone that is going to be, if you're looking for like a comeback, there's several that I like. I like some of those. You can't, Vidal's is a rookie, and Dobbins, I'm not going to call him just because of his injury. It's kind of risk reward, right? If you take him late, if he does, he's going to be he'll have a substantially decent year. I think I like Dameon Pierce. I still think I like him.
There you go.
I think he's late. I know that's a crowded team in general. We'll talk more about some of those guys later, I think. But I think that they're not. Mixon is old and Mixon's still, but he's a very good back, and they're going to try to get him the rock as much as possible. But they've already come out and they've said that they're going to use Pierce. He's come in supposedly in shape and all this good stuff. So he's not. I like guys like that are still relevant.
I have just received an email message. Apparently, he's not in the chat room. An email message circulating out of Philadelphia from one Dave Terps that says Ezekiel Elliott will be the best return in latest. It's right here. I got it. No, I really think that Pierce is there, and I think everyone's in search for that next Kyren Williams. And man, it sure would be fun if you can hit on it.
It's always fun. I hit on Kyren Williams a ton late last year. It was awesome. It made fantasy football great, setting that lineup every single week and putting Kyren Williams in there at like a 16th round pick. It was fantastic.
It doesn't happen very often. Remember when you would come to KFFSC and say Spiller, and that didn't happen, and then you would go. There's a guy, and normally it's not going to happen, but when it happens, man, it's nice.
It's magic. Is there magic in the Bears backfield, Steff, behind DeAndre Swift? You got Khalil Herbert there. You got Roschon Johnson there. If you are drafting a Bears running back, do you prefer one of those guys over the other?
So when I look at the Bears backs and even some of these other ones that have, you look at Dallas, right? You honestly think Dallas is going to open up the year with those two backs? So I always thought Khalil Herbert or John, one of those guys is who knows if they're typically is going to be one of these guys is going to possibly be moved. If not, I liked Herbert. Herbert's always had injuries, and he's also played for really bad offenses. So he's never had a chance to shine. I always thought he was incredibly talented. Last year he got cut with injuries. Roschon, we didn't really get a chance to see him that much. I think he was still learning the offense. So I like taking him just because of the upside of we don't know, right? So I'm taking him more than I'm taking Herbert. Let's just say that, because I want to see I want to see if there's any upside to him this year. Swift has always had injury problems, so I think he's a good risk reward. Is Roschon?
I always love it when I get a chance to talk about the Packers before Balky does, and we have talked a great deal of wide receivers, and it's in the chat room. It's stirred up a lot of things. Everyone seems to have differing opinions. Everybody tends to agree on Watson. And I would like you to talk a little bit about those receivers, about Watson. But I also want to change the focus about who could be catching passes there, because I really like Musgrave. I liked him when he came out of school. I probably have overrated him, and as a rookie, I overdrafted him. But it doesn't change the aspects that I see a skill set there. This is very similar to some of the tight ends that are going in the first 5-6 picks, what they're calling the elite tight ends. Could Musgrave join that group, at least on the young end, with guys like Ferguson there?
So you got Kraft there, but I love Musgrave. He's a similar type of player to what like a Kincaid is, right? They're lanky, but they can move. They run they're fast tight ends, good hands. I think that Musgrave is, and he's going literally after like Hawkinson and some of these others. I mean, you're picking him up pretty cheap. I've actually done a couple drafts where I have him as my top tight end. Trying to really pound away on receivers and running backs and just say, you know what, I'm going to do a draft where I have all receivers backs, and then I go because the quarterbacks are so late, I can get a good one, and then I'm looking at Musgrave. So no, I do like his upside. I tend to like him more as a number 2, though. I think he's a really good number 2 if you can grab, like one of the Pittses or the Pitts and Njoku or Ferguson or who's the other Jacksonville guy I like a lot too. So
Evan Ingram.
Yeah, Ingram. So you got and those guys kind of tend to run in that middle tier. And I love pairing him with one of those guys. So
yeah, and it makes sense, right? It's all about getting upside with that backup, and Musgrave has plenty of it for sure. I want to get to a couple of emails here for you, Steff. First one's Paul in Newark. Well, I don't know. Should we skip? I know. We can talk about this. Paul in Newark.
Emails.
Right, exactly. How do you feel about Jonathan Brooks this season? I know we just talked about Hubbard a little bit. And we'll ask you now about Jonathan Brooks. John Terry saying he took Jonathan Brooks in the 8th round of that FFPC main event draft tonight. He's going at the 706 normally in the Fantasy Pros Championship. So a little bit of value for John Terry tonight. How do you feel about him?
I've got him in one league. It was like Pollard with me last year, right? I thought Pollard was going way too high, but I took him as an insurance policy in one league. If you put Jonathan Brooks next year, we have a different story, right? It's just that we don't know where he's going to come off from the injury, right? And I just don't want to take that break on where he's going. I mean, he's going in that area where Zach Moss is going, where Devin Singletary, who I like a lot under Dabo. There's a lot of guys that I'm taking over Brooks, just not because he's a bad running back. I don't know what's going to happen with his knee, and it happened late in the year. It wasn't like it happened.
Yes, it does.
So yeah, I'm reluctant on him, and like I said, that's why I don't think there's anything special about Chuba. I don't know what's going to happen, with any of the other backups there, but it seems like there is. I'm just not as high on him.
Many fantasy drafters have strayed away from drafting high players that have come off that surgery in the NFL. They say the following year from the surgery is where you'll catch back up to the player's skill set. And so, but in Brooks' case, it seems like everybody's looking the other direction with that and is willing to say that it heals quicker if you're in college. And, everyone heals differently, and so it's still to see. I certainly don't care much for what is behind him in that backfield, and that's what keeps me a little bit off of some of those players from Carolina. Let's go roll back to the Green Bay question that I had for you. Talk to me, because like Dom dropped in on the message board. He talked a little bit about being in on Wicks, and there's just a variety of feelings and issues about that Green Bay receiver group. Let me ask you to expand a little bit on Watson, because this is the player I think really separate himself from those receivers that are being drafted in that round?
So I look at the Green Bay receivers, and I compare them. You look at Green Bay, so let's look at, say, Stroud versus Love, right? They're going to probably have very similar years. However, the Packer receivers, and they have just as many weapons equally. But all the Houston receivers are going ridiculously in the top 3 rounds. The Packers receiver, like Reed, I don't have a lot of Reed. I'm getting a lot of Watson, to your point. I like Watson. I like where he's being drafted. I don't have as much Reed just because he's going a little bit too high, and I like not that I don't think Reed's going to have a good year. I think in best ball, I think you can get some nice weeks with Reed, so I like him. I'm not pulling the trigger with him at 5 or in the 5th or 6th round. But I like Watson a lot. I think that, there's been some good news that have come out on him with just his health and how he's done some rehabbing on his legs to help with the hamstring issues. Wicks is like and you go with what you hear, right? And when Love says things like Wicks is going to have a huge year, what did Stroud say last year about Tank Dell? That's why people drafted Tank Dell. And Tank Dell, if he wouldn't have went down, he would have been, he was going right there, right? So I love the Pack receivers. I like Watson a lot. And I think even Dobbs, all those guys are great best ball. You can go 4 deep on the Packer receivers in best ball because they're so cheap and they're really good value. So
the other email we had for you is regarding the Chargers backfield, and it comes from to us from Dennis in White Plains, New York. Steff, is Gus Edwards the guy you want in the Chargers backfield this year? I feel like this is another thing that we've talked a lot about, but it's always good to get as many opinions on it as we can. Right now in the Chargers backfield, as far as where these guys are going, Gus Edwards 1004, Kamani Vidal 1202, J.K. Dobbins 1209. So Vidal and Dobbins in the 12th round. Are you willing to pay up for Edwards in the 10th, Steff?
So I kind of look at, if you remember in the old, like this is maybe 10 years ago remember when Tomlinson was on his last legs and he went over to the Jets? Mm-hmm. And you remember how, and this isn't, I think that Gus is a little more healthy. It's a little bit of a likely comparison, but Tomlinson went over to the Jets, and his first 8 or 9 games of the year were decent. Like they were really, really good. And I think that's what Gus is going to provide. I think Gus, where he's going, I think he's going to give us some good early round or early year magic. And I think just based on how they drafted Vidal and, watching him out of Troy, I mean, he was awesome at Troy. If you ever saw it, watched tape on him, he was just really, really good. I think that he wants him eventually to take that over. But, I think that I like both those two. And I love Dobbins, but Dobbins is literally like, just stabbing me in the gut every time because I was such a believer in him. It's like drinking battery acid. I'd rather do that than take Dobbins. But I mean, when you think about it, because he's just like last year, I was giving him one more chance because the guy was so electric. And then I remember when he blew his Achilles too. I'm like, it was so obvious. It was like he was embarrassed. So I'm worried. Yeah. I'm worried about Dobbins just because, but I still have taken Dobbins in a couple of leagues that I was in just because he's going so late. Mm-hmm. So, but no, I think that you're going to see some turnover there. Like I said, I think that early on you're going to see Gus, and I think that there may be a little shift.
Okay. So, and none of these guys are costing you your league
exactly.
because they're all double-digit round picks for sure.
And if there's an injury of one of them, you're going to be, because he's going to be a run-heavy coach at first, right? Mm-hmm. They've got a lot of young receivers. None of those receivers are going to scare anybody, so he's going to have to run the ball.
And he wants to run the ball. I mean, that's the whole idea, right? Like that they want to run the ball in. And I know that's always one of those things. They say they want to run the ball. Let's see what happens when the actual games start. But I don't know. Harbaugh's pretty stubborn. I think he's going to find a way. Ferrell, we're going to find a way to have you ask the last question of Steff Anderson.
Last question. You're a really positive guy. And, even those players that have stabbed you in the gut, you give them a chance to stab you again. Who has stabbed you too many times, or who can you predict might be wielding the knives in 2024 to ruin your season? Give me a guy that you will not get in business with. And then tell me someone, we talked about a lot of players, tell me someone we didn't hit on that you're really high on this year.
you know what? I forgot to go over this one, but I can just do this one off the top of my head because I know.
Yeah, dude,
I know
it's called the bare knuckles question.
And
You
this
can't.
is and this is like you're in the jungle. Get out of the way, and you're in like I get it. So this player I loved last year, and it's the same with. It's funny because I'll tell you a story about just real quick. There was a player I couldn't stand last year that I really like this year, and that's Pollard because he's going later. And last year I said that why would I draft Tony Pollard in the second round when I can get Cooks in the eighth round, which I took tons of him right for Buffalo, and he was great. And they're the same size. They're small backs. Yeah. They're not going to be able to carry the load. So this year it goes back to Houston. So Tank Dell, it's like just move him out of the way at the dance. You know what I mean? I'm trying to find someone else. He is not. I like him, but you have a coach saying that they're going to get Mixon 270 some odd carries. You've got Diggs there. You don't think he's going to command the ball? Mm-hmm. You've got Nico Collins there. He's going to command the ball. You've got Mechie working with the first team offense over there. You've got a lot of, there's a lot of noise. And even like last year when they had a lot of guys healthy, Tank, he needed some injuries. And I think he's a great receiver. I just don't think he's going to put up third round number on Tank or fourth round where he's going.
So that's pretty impressive. Tank Dell reminds me of Joshua Palmer when the Chargers had all the guys.
Yeah. And good receiver. It's just too many guys. It was like Quentin Johnson last year. Who's going to draft Quentin Johnson or even Adunze this year? They're all injury dependent, right? Let me think about guys that I like. I do like Samuel from Buffalo. I think they're going to use him as like a Swiss Army. I think they're going to use him just like Debo. I think it's going to be East Coast, Buffalo. I do like him. I think he's going to provide a little value. Moss's, if you're looking like in that like 12 to, we touched on some of the Packer receivers. I like those guys. I do like those guys like Dobbs, and especially in best ball. I do like Wicks and Dobbs. And I think Cooks for Dallas. He's old, and but I think he came on last year, and I think that he is going to. I think he's going to establish himself a little more. Yeah.
Okay. Who is your favorite double-digit Raider? Because we haven't talked about the Raiders.
Oh, yeah.
I'm not going to stand for it on this show.
Trey Tucker.
I'm going to ask your favorite.
Yeah, there you go. Yep. There you go, Ferrell. Your guy.
Are you talking about double-digit as far as like sleeper?
Yep.
Yes.
Oh yeah, Trey Tucker, not even close. I've drafted him in almost every league, and this is one that I'm almost like I don't want to talk about, but I think it's going to get out there now, especially now that I don't know why I don't with the retirement of
Gallup.
Gallup.
Hey, Darren Armani's at home going, "That's the guy that's drafting Tucker."
If you watch Trey Tucker, I think I was at a bar last year, and it's one of those things where I was looking up at the TV, and I think they're playing KC late. And he had that game where he had like 7 receptions for. I was like, did Tyreek get traded to the Raiders? So I'm like, he was. I'm like, yeah. So I do like Trey Tucker, but he's a little small. But I do like him. Yeah.
Trey Tucker last year against Denver, January 7th. Five catches for 79 yards. The previous week against Indy, he also had 5 catches. And he had a 7-catch game against the Miami Dolphins last year as well. Yeah, so absolutely. This is a guy that I think, especially in Kentucky, Ferrell, where everybody is wide receiver drunk, people will be picking up him super early, much earlier than the Fantasy Pros Championship.
Steff, where are you from?
I grew up in Wisconsin. So isn't that where you're from, Balky?
What part of Wisconsin are you? Where are you from?
I'm a Pointer.
Stevens Point.
I'm a Pointer.
Oh, how about that? My dad went to college there and was very disappointed that I did not attend that university. How about that?
My dad worked for the university system for many years, and I was situated up at Stevens Point. I lived on campus.
Did you go to Spash then?
For high school? I was a Spash kid back in the
good for you.
Just like all the fine residents of Wisconsin, you're invited for the last weekend in August to come to Kentucky and draft. Right. And, you look like a man with kids and responsibilities that could use a drink. So you can get drunk on wide receivers and anything else you would like here. We'll watch you and make sure you'll be okay.
That should be the tagline.
I moved to Minnesota though, so I've been in Minnesota the last 35 years.
Well, you don't have to tell anybody.
That's
you don't have to tell anybody. Just come on.
Steff
Anderson
on
that, man.
Steff Anderson, we'd love to see you in Louisville. That'd be fantastic. And hopefully we see you holding $1 million check at the end of the season with the Fantasy Pros Championship. Congratulations on the success you've already had in the FFPC. Good luck this season, and thanks for carving out a little time out of your schedule to come talk fantasy football with us on this Wednesday night, man. Really appreciate it. Be good. We'll talk to you soon.
Yeah, thank you, guys.
Absolutely.
You guys.
Steff Anderson, the 6-time FFPC league champion, joining us on the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour tonight. How about that? Stevens Point, Wisconsin. I'll have to tell my father about that.
I had a feeling that he was one of your homeboys.
Yeah.
I just did.
Well, all the good-looking, intelligent people come from Wisconsin.
And I sit down and they know everything about cheese.
Yeah, and we know everything about cheese. My wife actually picked up a extra sharp white cheddar wedge at the grocery store yesterday that I sampled tonight. That is chef's kiss awesome. So I'm very excited.
You picked up an extra sharp husband too.
Yeah, well, that remains to be seen.
Girl can shop.
Let's go to emails tonight, Ferrell, and we'll finish up strong. Jim in Mojave Valley, Nevada. Hi, guys. Are you buying into Deneric Prince being the backup to Isaiah Pacheco this season? Great job on Pros versus Joes this week. That is Jim in Mojave Valley, Nevada. Thank you so much, Jim. We appreciate the kind words. Yeah, so what's going on with I think what's interesting about this, Ferrell, is we kind of we're all about Clyde Edwards-Helaire being the guy behind Pacheco, right? And now we're seeing Deneric Prince work with the ones and working as the first running back onto the field when Pacheco goes out. Deneric Prince right now, if he hasn't already, is going to be going up. Running back 70 over the last 3 days in the Fantasy Pros Championship, taken in, that's not even ADP. He was only taken in one draft in the Fantasy Pros Championship over the last 3 days. It was the mid-18th. That's going to climb. Farrell, I do have some interest in Deneric Prince late.
Yeah, I think you should. I liked watching him in college. I think he's capable. Balky, if you got size on him, I remember him at coming in at about 220. He was rather big back between the tackles. Am I getting this correctly?
I'm looking it up right now.
Please. To me, fantasy relevance does not matter behind Pacheco because I don't think he's ever coming off the field. But you want a potential piece of the Kansas City Chiefs. It is always worthwhile. And, this will be something to watch in their 3 preseason games.
6 foot 216, according to the Chiefs.
Yeah, that's a between the tackle runner, and that, Pacheco doesn't look like that kind of runner, but he certainly is. And so this gives it a little bit more. I think John Terry's quoting scripture now. He's done everything else tonight. So
he's got
14-12.
Deneric Prince 14-12 means $1 million grand prize in the FFPC.
Not to me.
He went. No, he didn't get him tonight, but he did go.
That's the only fish he hadn't caught in years. That's the damn truth.
That's where Prince went in the main event tonight. I would expect him to climb up.
That's good public service to John Terry.
Oh, fantastic! Yeah. Walt in Napa, California. Hey, fellas, what's up?
Hey, Walt.
Is Marshawn Lloyd's injury causing you to move him down your draft boards? That is Walt in Napa, California. It's been, you kind of got to sort through what Matt LaFleur has been saying because he said Lloyd's hip injury wasn't serious. In fact, I think the latest I heard today was Lloyd is going to have his first training camp practice tomorrow. Actually, not tomorrow. Packers are off tomorrow. Friday will be his first practice. He was dealing with a hip injury. LaFleur said A.J. Dillon, this is the best he's ever looked as long as he's been in Green Bay. He was really effusive in his praise for him. So for me, I'm more concerned about Dillon and less concerned about this hip injury. And it's not that I'm bumping up A.J. Dillon on my draft boards, but I know he's a trusted guy. I know he knows the offense. And Marshawn Lloyd is a new guy, and he's a rookie. And is he going to be able to pass block? So there's I think he's already been anointed by the fantasy public as the guy that you want in Green Bay because so many people are down on Josh Jacobs. And Marshawn Lloyd is going at the 11:01, the 10-12 turn, halfway through Fantasy Pros Championship drafts. Ferrell, I am a little concerned about Dillon eating into that workload for Lloyd, maybe more so than a lot of people are expecting.
As a broadcast professional, that you are, and based on your geographic location, can you expand on why people are down on Josh Jacobs?
Well, I think they look at the season he had last year. They looked at that he was he had the injury bug a little bit. But keep in mind, and this is the other thing that to answer that, because didn't Jacobs, he was looking for a contract last year, Ferrell. This is a guy that was trying to get paid. He didn't. He kind of showed up late. I don't know what kind of football shape he was in. And obviously, you know, if you are not participating in everything leading up to the start of the season, you're kind of going to be behind everybody else. That's not the case this year. I mean, he's been doing everything. OTAs, mini camp, training camp. He's been in Green Bay this whole time working out with his teammates. So I think there are people that are down on him based on recency bias. I don't necessarily know if they should be. I'm excited to see what he can do.
Remember a couple years ago when he was returning kicks in preseason and fell all the way to the 8th round?
Which, by the way, he was returning kicks this week too in Green Bay for the Packers.
That could be a good sign. And remember where he finished in the running back pack?
Number one. He led the league in rushing that year. A guy
I wouldn't be too down on him, nor would I be spending much time counting up fantasy values of the depth chart.
John Terry just with the knife stab into Ferrell. Players only get better when they leave the Raiders. Oh,
well, that may be true, John, because you know what? The tremendous coaching staff and culture of the Raiders carries through without the league. You know, those trees are planted everywhere.
There has been a seed being planted in my brain and fantasy owners' brains about Jaleel McLaughlin and how good he has been in training camp so far, how much he's been running with the ones. Joel in Jacksonville, is Javonte Williams a must fade right now? We heard reports this week from multiple beat writers in Denver that Javonte Williams and Samaje Perine may be battling for the same roster spot there. Javonte Williams at the 908 right now. Jaleel McLaughlin at the 1202. Audric Estime apparently already has a running back spot locked up on this squad. You know McLaughlin's going to make the team, and it may come down to Williams or Perine. Ferrell, it's tough for me to wrap my head around this. I think Williams makes the team. I think he's the starter, but when multiple beat writers are saying this, I have to take it seriously.
I've drafted him enough where I can take a pause on him and a wait-and-see attitude. And you know what? If he's not appreciated by this team, he will be by some other. And he is recovered from the injury. And I think he's a very good football player, very good running back. I like his style. I like his hesitancy behind the line. He's got incredible pass catching skills. If this is the kind of player that the head coach can't figure out how to utilize, send him somewhere else, he can.
Yeah, and he might. I mean, I've heard I think it was Permar was saying he thinks Javonte Williams is going to be a Dallas Cowboy this year, which would be crazy, but this is what we're here for. We embrace the chaos. We love the crazy. It's what makes this so much fun. Ferrell, thank you so much for hanging out with me, as that's the last email I have on this Wednesday. You did fantastic work this week. I look forward to hanging out with you once again on Sunday for Pros versus Joes kicking off and resuming week 2 at 8 p.m. Sunday night. Thank you so much, my friend.
I look forward to seeing those Joes draft.
That's right. Me too. Me too as well. That is the definitive commissioner of fantasy football, Ferrell Elliott. Check out the Kentucky Fantasy Football State Championship, KFFSC.com. I just registered for a handful of drafts today. Very excited about it. Probably going to be registering for more as I kind of figure out my commission schedule and how I'm going to work it that weekend in Louisville. KFFSC.com is where to go for that. Thanks to Steff Anderson, Ferrell Elliott, the FFPC, Rob Bryson, of course, each and every one of you. This show will return next Friday, August 2nd at 10 p.m. Eastern Time. The format of that show, not quite sure yet. We might cover a live Fantasy Pros draft. We might have a more traditional show with a guest as well. So stay tuned for that. That's coming up Friday, August 2nd. We go live again, not this Friday, but the following Friday. Tomorrow night on the Better Sports Network's High Stakes Fantasy Football Show, which you can watch right here on this YouTube channel, as well as the Better Sports Network, bettersports.com, or betternetwork.com, and all the Better Sports Network socials. It's a big one. Legendary Upsides Pat Kerrane from the Ship Chasing crew is going to join me for 2 full hours. We're going to chop it up. We'll talk about best ball theory. We'll talk about a lot of, drafting 2.0, high stakes drafting 2.0. We'll get into a lot of players' takes as well with Pat Kerrane. So that is tomorrow night at 7 p.m. Eastern time. The FFPC YouTube channel after that will resume our Pros versus Joes coverage. And like I said, on Sunday, 8 p.m. Eastern time. It is the Moonshine League number 4. FFPC Joes, including 2 former guests of the show that we just had on last week. Daniel Wright and Gino Donnie will be drafting. Another guy we just had on about a month or so ago who's been hanging out in the YouTube chat tonight, watching all the PVJ drafts so far. Sean Green and his co-manager Michael Young will be drafting. A guest from the hsffhour years ago, Patrick and Tim Lynch. Patrick Lynch was on the show. We're going to have him drafting in Pros versus Joes on Sunday night. Rob Cannon and Stephen Rucker, John Bauman and Gordon Chappell, and then, of course, Danny Mueller will also be drafting the FFPC Joe from the 12 spot. The Pros on Sunday night, Rotoballers Josh Hayes, the Stack Hunters from Player Profiler Dan Williamson and Bradley Stalder, Big Guy Fantasy Sports and Fantasy Football Expo founder Bob Lung, Late Rounds JJ Zachariason, just had him on the BSN HSFF show last week. He'll be drafting. Jeff Manns from FantasyGuru.com, and of course Mauricio Gutierrez from Estadio Fantasy will also be drafting that night. That is going to be a fun one, and it all starts at 8 o'clock Sunday night. No Dave Turp for that. We will not have him on. We will have special guest host and pro drafter. He drafted on Tuesday night, last night. Brandon Murchison from Rotoballer will guest co-host with myself and Ferrell. And we'll also have a special appearance by Fantasy Mojo's own Darren Armani. He'll pop on the broadcast as well. It's going to be a lot of fun, and we hope you can join us at 8 o'clock Sunday night. The 2024 Fantasy Pros Championship weekday giveaway is going strong. We got a midnight draft coming up in about 45 minutes or so. It's already half full. That one is going to go off. So if you want to get some action in and join the weekday giveaway, get yourself eligible for a free Fantasy Pros Championship team with the ones we're giving away on Friday. Register for that midnight draft now. Hop in the fun and draft for $1 million in a $6 million plus prize pool. We have slow drafts and live drafts going on with the FFPC main event right now. Register for that. That's another $1 million grand prize. 2 separate $1 million grand prizes this year for the second straight year. The best ball and the Superflex best ball tournaments are going on as well. You can enter the Superflex for as little as $35. And of course, the best ball tournament giving away a $300,000 grand prize this year. Check out Empire Leagues, Empire Dynasty Startups, and Classic Dynasty Startups over at myffpc.com. We got it all. If you got $5, we got a league for you over at the Fantasy Football Players Championship. Once again, remember to like this video, subscribe to the channel, comment on the video, share it with your friends and enemies, and get notified each and every time we go live, which will be tomorrow night, 7 p.m. Eastern time on the HSFF show with myself and Legendary Upside and Ship Chasing's Pat Corain. We'll talk with you then. Your week continues now.
This has been another episode of the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour presented by myffpc.com. It was broadcast live and was watched around the world. Balky and Ferrell will be back next week with more analysis, more interviews, and more advice from guests much smarter than they are. Thanks for watching, and we'll talk with you again next week.
I should also mention, too, Thomas Clay is also just posting on here to get Dan Seidenfaden on the air on Sunday. Dan is a FFPC Joe this year. I think he is drafting Monday or Tuesday, but maybe we can have him on and give some guest analysis. I don't know. I will send out the invites. We'll see who we can get on, and if it works out, it works out. But I should always mention that anytime we do these Pros versus Joes broadcasts, not only are we covering the action pick by pick, but we always have several interviews on from pros and Joes, which is always fun. And we'll always get them to make a couple of picks on the air. You don't want to miss the action. It resumes Sunday night at 8 p.m. Eastern. We'll talk with you tomorrow night with Legendary Upside's Pat Corain on the High Stakes Fantasy Football Show right on these airwaves. Thanks for watching, everybody.